Hey, what's up, Dev Crew? Today we're going to go over how you can debug your code so you can build mental models and visually see how your code is working so that you can actually start to really understand and unwrap that map and mental model of JavaScript. So you're going to need two tools for this. You're going to need VS Code, which we have right here, and Node. I'll put some links in the description below for those. Once you have those set up, I want you to create a folder on your computer. And hopefully you already have some files, but if you don't, go ahead and create a folder. And from this folder, I want you to put inside your files, or I want you to just right click and go open with code. Optionally, if you are on Mac, you're going to go File, open folder, and that will go ahead and open your up your folder as well. Once you have that working, you will see on the underneath the Explorer section, you'll see your folder called Debugging. I'm going to create a new file here with this icon called test.js. And I have some code that we've already written to set up to test out. So if you have your own code, great. You can start off with that code. But we've got some code here. And we're going to get some more insight as to how it's working. So there's a few things that we're going to do. We're going to execute this code on our computer instead of inside of a browser. And we're going to pause line by line and take a look at what's going on with that. In order to do that, we have to use the debugger tool. So to get to the debugger tool, we're going to click Run and Debug over here and just hit JavaScript Debug Terminal. And there's other ways to do this by setting up a launch JSON file. I'll put a link in the description below for that's a more complicated setup that I don't want to go over right now because it might not always work automatically. But we'll just do the JavaScript debug terminal for now because this pretty much works every time. So once you have that up and going, you're going to want to type in node and the name of your file. So I've got test.js. So we're saying, hey, node, I'm going to pass you in test.js so you can run this file on my computer. And before we run it, we want to create what's called a breakpoint. So there's breakpoints to the left-hand side of the number line, and it'll turn red once you click on them. And this gives us a place or a moment in time in our code that we're going to pause. So particularly when we get to line 9 and execute that line, it's going to pause. So I'm going to now hit enter now that I have node and test.js set up, and we're going to pause right now. Now you'll see a few things pop up on the screen. So right here in this section, you'll see right above your code, typically, or near the top middle section of the screen, you'll have your kind of control toolbar for your debugger. And there's different parts inside here. This continue one will go to a next breakpoint. So if I hit continue, it'll go down to this next breakpoint down here. If I hit step over, it'll go to the next line of execution. And step into will step into a function call. And we'll be using just today the step over and the step into and showing you how that works. So the other thing that you'll see is on the left-hand side, you'll see the variables section, and we have different scopes set up. I'm not going to explain scope right now, but it's basically what you have access to from different lines of code that you're executing. So right now, we're going to hit the step over button, and I want you to pay attention to what's going to happen on the left-hand side of the screen. In fact, to build a mental model, a really good trick to use is to think about what's going to happen and then get immediate feedback as to what does happen. You're kind of coaching yourself using the debugger and fixing your mental model as you go. So I wanted you to do that now. Think about what's going to happen when I hit this step over button and it goes to line 10. All right. So what happened was we had print heading show up on the side as a variable, and we see that's defined to hello, which is pretty cool. I'm going to do the same thing. Again, I want you to ask yourself what's going to happen. There's three places that things could happen in this context, right? Either something could change in the variables, something's also going to change in where we're at in the lines of code, and then something could also change down here in the terminal. So I want you to think as you go through and debug, what's going to happen to each one of these? Is anything going to happen in all three of them? Is only in one place, right? Typically, you're at least going to have something happen on your screen where it will go to the next line, hopefully, right? But sometimes it might your code might error out, which might not be expected, and that's going to help you, again, build your mental model and figure out how JavaScript's working, or at least how your code is working. So I'm going to hit the step over button again, and hopefully you guessed, we would have print ending show up here. And finally, we're going to look at how to step into a line of into a function now. So I'm going to use this step into here, and you'll see we're actually going to go into the function call. So this function didn't run until we executed it, right? And you know a function executes when you have parentheses next to the function name right here. And if we look at title and end, title and end are variables that we have inside of this function that are have the same values as print heading and print ending. So we now kind of just build a little mental model that, oh, so title is the same as print heading, and end is the same as print ending, right? And we can see that by inspecting our variables and looking at our code over here. So I'm going to step over again. I want you to think what's going to happen in our variable section, what's going to happen in with our breakpoints, so which line of code next will be highlighted, and finally what's going to happen in our console. All right, so over here, nothing happened. In our console, we got hello, and we went to this next line of code. Now here's a pretty cool thing you can do with for loops to kind of bring your mental model of for loops. So there's 4 different sections inside of for loops. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right? You have your initialization section where you can set up a variable. You have your condition where you can tell whether or not you want to exit that for loop. And finally, you have your incrementer. And you also have the body. So we're going to see here this little dance that occurs within for loops and see how that works. And you'll see the real power of using the debugger here. So I want you to guess what's going to happen right over here once we go to the next button, as well as where are we going to go in the execution. So this one isn't going to go to the next line necessarily, it's going to go to the next execution statement. So when you do the step over, it's actually going to go to your next execution statement, not necessarily the next line. So you'll see that here now. So over here, we just got I defined to 0, and we went to this conditional, right? So 0 less than 10, right? Is this going to be true or false? And what's going to happen? Are we going to go to the I++, the incrementer, or are we going to go to the body? Let's check and see. I'm going to hit step over. You might have thought it was I++ because it's all in order, right? But that's actually not where it went. It went into the body. And why did it do that? It did that because if we incremented beforehand, we would have I would be equal to 1, and we wouldn't be ever consoling out the initial value. Now, I'm going to hit step over again. What's going to happen to the variables? What's going to happen with our code here? Where is it going to go next, right? In our code, is it going to go up here? Is it going to go outside to line 6? Where's it going to go? Is it going to go back up to let? And what's going to happen inside of our console? Think about those things. Let's run it. All right, the console printed out 0. Nothing happened over here, and we're in the incrementer. Now what's going to happen next? Let's check ourselves. I'm going to guess we're going to go back to our condition. All right, we went back to our condition. Oh, but I forgot that this was going to increment. There we go. I just fixed my mental model. So you're going to see this little dance that happens. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it goes 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, and we'll see that here. So 2, and then we're on 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. And you can see what happens each time with I, what happens in the console as we kind of loop through that. Okay? And that's the basics of debugging with JavaScript and helping yourself build a mental model. Thanks for joining with me.